Good morning. I am very happy to be here to moderate this session on transforming India's mobility landscape, global insights, and strategic solutions for a sustainable EV ecosystem. I would like to thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity to set the background for the discussion. We are now are at a pivotal moment where the urgency of an energy transformation intersects with the reality of an environmental crisis. As India's transport demand continues to soar, the path to our net zero target by 2070 will be defined by how we choose to move not just goods and people, but also innovate ideas and ambition. Currently, the transport sector accounts for nearly 20% of India's energy related CO2 emissions. This makes one thing clear: decarbonizing mobility is no longer a choice, it is a necessity. Also, automobiles contribute about 20% of emissions, which result in deterioration of air quality in most of the metros. Government had launched e-mobility to address three main issues. One, with increasing automobile growth for catering for the fossil fuels for which we are importing the crude is going up every year. Secondly, the automobiles pollute the air, and the quality of air what we breathe in most of the metros is not as per air quality standards. And also, with the growth of auto industry, the requirement of fossil fuels, which I mean the gasoline and diesel fuels what we are using now, is going to continuously increase, resulting in increased import of crude. So the idea behind e-mobility was to properly manage recycling of batteries, so that at some point of time in near future would be at a stage where we the requirement of import of lithium and other rare earth materials required for making the batteries etc would come down, unlike the crude. India's electric mobility journey goes far beyond just vehicles. It is a larger reimagining of energy systems, environmental priorities, economic models, and the very ecosystem that powers our movement. To support this transition, domestic innovation in battery technology is critical. We need solutions tailored for Indian conditions while also remaining open to learning from global benchmarks. Our vision should be firmly grounded in the principle of Make in India for the world, positioning India as a hub for EV manufacturing, component exports, and green jobs. And for this transition to be truly sustainable, it must be powered by clean energy. We have already seen inspiring solar based e mobility success stories across the global south. The time is now to adapt, amplify, and scale these solutions across India. Today, for this panel discussion, we have three very sharp, knowledgeable persons sharing their views about the present and future clean mobility in India. We have with us Dr. Anita Gupta, Scientist G, Advisor and Head DST. Dr. Anita Gupta, a visionary leader and dedicated public servant, currently the Head of Climate, Energy and Sustainable Technologies vertical at the Department of Science and Technology. With a distinguished career in the advancing India's technological frontiers, she is a key facilitator and enabler of infusing critical thinking, problem solving, innovation, entrepreneurship, pathways for decarbonizing India and clean energy transition. Dr. Gupta has played a pivotal role in shaping energy programs, partnership models, and policies that promote, nurture, and accelerate clean energy solutions and sustainable technologies. She is a PhD from IIT Delhi, and she has played a key role in carving out national initiative for developing and harnessing innovations under Prime Minister's flagship initiative of Startups India, Stand Up India. She also has led many cross-border collaborations both on startups, women entrepreneurs, and in clean energy domain. Dr. Gupta has significantly contributed in fostering international linkages with countries like Australia, Brazil, and Canada. Thank you, ma'am, for being here. This, the second panelist is Mr. Sudeep Ambare. Sudeep is presently the CEO of ARI Advanced Mobility Transformation and Innovation Foundation. He is leading one of the most dynamic innovation ecosystems in mobility sector. He has been a driving force in fostering entrepreneurship, nurturing startups, and accelerating many groundbreaking innovations. He is an alumnus of Coventry University, UK, and a chartered engineer. Has more than decade of experience in leading multifunctional domains. At ARI, he and his team are shaping the future of mobility with core focus on innovation for indigenization. Mr. Ambare has mentored and led the startups to progress from concept to commercial. Our third panelist is Mr. Anand Mimani. He is CEO of Greenline Mobility Solutions. Anand has over 24 years of cumulative experience both as an entrepreneur and as a business leader in corporate world. His expertise lies in setting up new business and scaling them, raising capital, forging profitable partnerships, and developing strategic alliances. Anand has set up and led AMW Auto Component Limited as MD and CEO for 14 years, eventually moving into the role of president before taking charge as CEO of Greenline Logistics. Anand is committed to decarbonizing heavy trucking in India and is setting the strategic direction for Greenline Logistics, the company pioneering green logistics in India. Understand from Dr. Anita Gupta. Ma'am, DST has been at the forefront of encouraging all the OEMs and the major component manufacturers to set up their R&D centers. And also, you had been leading a lot of committees for nurturing startups and innovation in India. I would first like you to just briefly sum up what all you are doing in terms of promoting innovation and new ideas with reference to mobility.
So, thank you, and thank you, the Entrepreneur magazine, for having invited me for this event. And it's a good platform to share our thoughts, in particular, what Department of Science and Technology is doing a lot in infusing the culture of science, technology, research, and innovation. So we are driving the entire STI ecosystem to say, and as we speak, primarily DST is the body to foster extramural research. We are known as extramural research funding body. We empower institutions, we empower our scientists and research to undertake quality research in India. But today, as you know, we have set out our pledges, which is for 2030 in terms of clean energy transition. Needless to say, the climate change is no longer a narrative itself. It is a necessity, and we need to really tackle it head on. We have already set our aspirations for 2047 to be a developed India. And then our final commitment and overarching commitment is to net zero by 2070. Can only government attain and enable reach all the kind of goals we are aspiring for? So, what are those climate actions? And as a responsible nation and as a responsible government of India department, we cannot solve this humongous problem all alone. That's why we need to really take everyone along. So it is not only whole of government approach. If you speak in terms of mobility, there are 10 government of India departments driving various initiatives to foster the sustainable transportation and make a positive shift towards it, having overarching ambition to really transition from current 7% to say EV market to 30% by 2030. So, and given the kind of geopolitical dynamics we are all living in, what really needs to stimulate, because if we talk of develop India or shift towards make in India, unlike other developed countries, if we do not have a strong foundation of research and innovation in the country, we cannot aspire to really, it will remain on papers. So, if we really want to translate those ambitions into really actions, we need to collaborate. And I would like to further add on to it. Today is the day. Today is the time of co-optation. We need to in fact, collaborate and then compete. So when we are trying to solve a big problem like whether it's energy transition, clean energy transition, or only focusing on the shift towards cleaner mobility, we have to really bring everyone on board, and that's what the task which was mandated by India's government of India's think tank, which is Niti Aayog. So Niti Aayog about 4 5 years back really gave us and assigned us a task to really come out with the what are the current R&D imperatives, challenges in the broader sense of ecosystem. How do we really, if we really want to make EVs widely adopted in the country, and that gave us that's how we align with 200 sort of stakeholders, largely OEMs, think tanks, startups, researchers, and all the government of India departments who are who will be involved in this kind of making it this ambition a reality in place. And we actually came out with the white paper. It's a very quality, anyone can access through our DST's website, which really talks about the three major areas, because India is in a tropical condition, tropical EV batteries. Second is power electronics and machine drives. Third is the charging infrastructure. So we have really given it a very good deep dive into all these three areas. And then subsequently to that white paper, we already have brought out a very detailed analysis on these three domains, and there are detailed reports also available. Also, Office of PSA has brought out roadmap on EVs. They are also driving the pilot initiative of zero emission corridors, particularly from Delhi to Jaipur. How do we enable that kind of zero emission corridor to be put in place? After that, under the behest of our honorable PM, because as I said, government cannot only push R&D, it has to be industry driven. What are the current market needs, futuristic market needs? How do we align the specific and directed focus research areas? And that's how our a new entity, Anusandhan National Research Foundation, which is primarily, it has on a twofold objective. One is to really stimulate the and democratize the R&D research, which is, should not be confined only to select IITs, IISers, or so-called national institutions of importance. It should percolate down to tier 2, tier 3 kind of, because research rigor has to really stem from the heart of India and all the nooks and corners of India. That's how institutions rigor needs to be stimulated. Secondly, we need to really get along with the industry in a big way. So it is tailored where the bulk of funding has to come from industry. Industry has to sit on drawing board to devise what problem needs to be really focused on, so that the time to market is compressed. How do we compress the innovation to market value chain? That's how there's a first mission launched under ANRF is Maha EV mission, and there the industry is also part. It's a multi-institutional collaborative program where industry is an integral partner, and industry is also having a skin in the game in terms of the funding. They are actually infusing minimum 10% funding has to come for the overall. So big problem has to be solved in a collaborative manner. That's my message. And my group, which contributed in bringing all these reports, we have also tried to really spot and nurture startups, because we feel startups currently, there are close to 1800 startups in the EV domain. Now is time we need to focus and tailor most of our programs in terms of ecosystem building, in terms of providing the value added services, curate them to a level that we generate enough confidence of whether it's from the investor side, it is from the industry side. How do we really, for they are also part of the deep tech kind of support system. How do we enable them to validate their products as part of the PME drive, phase-wise component manufacturing, if we really aspiring it for making India a product nation, a manufacturing base? And there are a host of other issues because of geopoliticals, how the supply chain reset is happening. So what are the alternate chemistries? How do we really create a group for sodium ion in India, which is sodium is abundantly available. So not only from the cell chemistry perspective, but also how do we leverage our strong, you can say, penetration of smartphones and our digital identity Aadhaar. So what could be the unified energy interface for locating interoperability? So all there are a host of issues which we are moving off from the rare earth supply chain. So all these pieces of the ecosystem have to be addressed collectively, initially by government, but the program has to be tailored, which takes everyone along. And since it is we need to hit upon every problem in a very focused manner, collaborative manner, structured manner, really to arrive at the solutions which we are aspiring, and that too with speed and scale.
Thank you, ma'am. Picking from what you said, uh, unlike in other countries like US and Europe, the interaction between academia and industry is very, very low, and also there is a big gap between what the majority of the colleges are teaching, the skill levels of students coming out of the colleges, and what are the industry expectations. There's a gap. So what do you think we should do to actually bridge these gaps? One, in terms of skill levels of the students matching with the industry expectations. Another is how to improve the research happening in academia to benefit the industry, so that they would be more connected with what is happening in the industry.
So yeah, so these are the current challenges. If we really scan our education ecosystem, although there is a national education policy already in place where innovation is really an important paradigm, in our recent times. So all educational institution, the research rigor has to be intensified. That's for sure. But how will it make it happen, and how that could be really put into place? So that's why AICT, which is the prime body which governs all the technical institutions, to say, has come out with Institute Innovation Cell concept. So innovation, so the hackathons, there are industry driven competitions where a problem is posed before students. So these are ways where really need to encourage the problem solving and creative thinking spirit of students. That is really very important, because apart from the routine coursework, they need to really be involved in multidisciplinary team. And I would just like to share upon DST had a very good experience of running a very successful a decade long program, India Innovation Growth Program, which was we partnered with Lockheed Martin and Tata Trust, which had two components. One was University Challenge. So I think where we really, there were problem statements, but it was sector agnostic, to say, because initially the intent was to inculcate the innovative spirit among the students, which the students were not exposed to. So we have to really give them the pressing needs of challenges, and cultivate the culture of team spirit, and a team way they can solve and address to a problem. That's how Smart India Hackathon was also born from AICT. So initially those programs are rolled out, then we can really come down and narrow it down to very specific needs of the country. I truly agree. At the moment, close to 16 lakhs of engineering graduates are being churned out by our uh, vast network of technical institutions. But if you really scan them, how many are perfectly job ready? So in terms of job readiness, they may be falling low. So they are already still after graduation, they are work in progress. So we need to enable with the requisite, and there is a new Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship, which is also focusing in a big way to how to create and future proof the workforce, which will be really helpful for not only for the clean energy transition, but also if we are aspiring India to be a manufacturing hub in the decades to be. So it has to be tackled in a multiple through multiple modes, multiple strategies, and everyone has to come on board. While government can give overarching directions in terms of implementation and making it a reality, I think each one of has a role to play with aggregate policies, programs, and partnerships.
I think industry has a major role to play because they are the ones who have to accept what is happening in industry and also in the academic institutes, and also adopt students to actually give them exposure to how things happen in the industry when they are still students. I have one more last question for you. We had been focusing on Make in India till now. Do you think it is a time to shift to invent in India for the world? And for that to happen, what more DSTs need to do, and what do you expect the industry to come forward?
So this is the most opportunate time to invent in India.
Yes.
When we are hit upon, so we say that um necessity is the mother of invention, and who is then the father? So it is said innovation is the father. In order to translate innovation to market, and if we really have the, if we list down the pressing challenges we have in terms of technology, we have already identified there are 11 set of areas where we want to position India if we really want to be a truly a developed nation in next 2 decades. And in that direction, I am, every work is now being focused work is being launched in a mission mode. So be it like emerging technologies like quantum technologies, DST is driving that quantum mission of worth 6,000 CR. And if we break down, it completes ecosystem is being tried to build up, starting with the research infrastructure, creating specialized groups in India with researchers. And now, if we really want to focus, subcritical funding will not suffice. It has to be really supplemented with the right amount of investment. And you won't believe, under the quantum mission, we are supporting startups to the tune of 25 CR on the in the equity mode. But like there's a huge funding size, because typically in government systems and schemes, it restricted to only 1 CR, and even grant mode is restricted to 50 lakhs or so. But if government is visionary enough, and if we really want to aspire and position ourselves with other leaders in quantum, whether it's the US or China, we really have to think big. So in terms of funding, Kitty, we are giving. Next is geospatial technology. A new mission has been launched. So in entire mapping exercise will be done through a survey. Another aspect is cyber physical systems. We are talking about digital twins, cobotics, robotics, IoTs, and all these aspects. We have created 25 technology innovation hubs in last phase, and we are scaling up for such hubs with 500 CR of fund infusion, and calling them as technology research translation parks. So that's on the three fronts. But like under climate action, there are already 9 national missions underway, and one mission which is already in the advanced stages of consideration is sustainable transportation. So I think we have to really tackle all these pressing challenges in a mission mode, involving so Invent in India, enhancing the research rigor and the quality is paramount, and becomes the one great foundation to really leapfrog in the technological advancements.
Thank you, ma'am, for giving insights into what all DST is doing to support research and also support the startups. Thank you very much. Now I come to Sudeep Ambare. Can you briefly explain what you are doing in AMTIF of ARI?
So, first of all, thank you so much to the entrepreneur team for having us here. I hope I'm audible. Yeah. So, ARAI AMTIF is basically an incubator, Section 8 company of ARAI. That's the Automotive Research Association of India. And AMTIF stands for Advanced Mobility Transformation and Innovation Foundation. So, the primary role of AMTIF is to provide, like we say, a 360 support to the innovators of the nation. And the focus area is building indigenous technologies right here in India and scaling them up for a global platform. So we work in the domain of mobility and allied sectors, and it could start as early as power generation all the way up to space tech. So essentially from a part level to a product and also a service interface. And the way we do it is basically giving them support on 3 critical areas. That is innovate, incubate, and finally the biggest part, integrate, because that is where the bigger challenges come. To integrate these new innovations into mainstream, let's say, production lines or service background industry. And to do this, we have the support of industry partners, because ARI has a very strong network with the OEMs. We are supported by multiple ministry programs on innovation, providing them financial assistance. We provide them access to IPR and how to raise patents for the nation, because that is the next big currency for the nation, I feel. And finally, the bigger element where we come into the picture is to take these innovators through the testing and certification phase, because that really opens the door to raise bigger investments for these new innovations to come into the market. So that being the 360 support, and the way we like to project it is like a conceptualization to commercialization journey for the innovators of the nation.
The startups whom you are incubating in your group, so you are focusing on auto related
Mobility and allied.
and electric vehicles. EVs?
So when we talk about mobility and allied sectors, so it covers the entire horizon.
Okay.
So that would be like, I would say, let's talk about, Madam talked about sodium ion energy. So we have startups working on sodium ion as a technology. And interestingly, like Ma'am mentioned, we are looking at import substitution as one of those important and critical factors to drive the nation forward. So we really take pride in saying that the innovations are made in India, but also to be scaled up globally, because that is the real game changer for our nation, to have a technology transfer capability to give to the other nations also.
No, how many startups do you have, and how many have actually gone to the stage of actual manufacturing?
Right. So in total, ARA Amtif as of date is supporting 75 startups across the mobility domains. And I would say that we are now evaluating 300 plus other startups in various domains. So that's the broad numbers that we are looking at supporting it. Yeah.
The one question I have is how is ARI or we provide support to startups in terms of their requirements for design, simulation, testing, etc. And will those be open for other startups, not with you?
Effectively, if I were to say that we really focus on two ways of supporting startups, it could be driven by a problem statement that they are trying to solve on their own, or we also take pride in having the industry to come on board and define these problem statements for the innovators, because we think it's a two-part engagement program, right? You need an innovator and you need an entity to aggregate that or to take it forward also. So startups come to us at various TRL levels. We support the requirements if it's coming from the innovator side by first doing a comprehensive background check whether the problem statement being solved by the startup is really a problem statement in the interest of the nation or the ecosystem at large. Doing that, we evaluate three critical parameters. So it's a TRL assessment, it's a MRL assessment, which is the market readiness levels, and most importantly, the regulatory readiness levels. So these three factors put together really define how strong is your value proposition for the nation also. And coming to how the support is happening, so ARA really has been doing testing certification for the OEMs for a long time now. But for the innovators, this entire journey of testing certification, the know-how itself is very limited. So we are happy to give them access to the R&D labs, the access to the mentors. So the R&D experts at ARA are accessible to them. And finally, what I would say is the biggest value proposition to them is to really take them, handhold them through this entire journey of homologation. Because then we really see the investors being more convinced to invest in these new technologies which are disruptive in nature. So that's the 360 support for them.
Thank you, Sdeep. Turning to Mr. Anand, first I would like to know more about what you are doing actually. How we are trying, what initiatives you have taken in terms of setting up green logistics.
Leading decarbonization in road logistics. Fueling sustainability with LNG. Shaping the future of green logistics. Empowering industries like metals and mining, cement and construction, oil, gas and chemicals, FMCG, automotive, express delivery and others. Coming soon in electric. India's first heavy-duty EV truck with battery swap technology. Cutting-edge engineering, suited for all loads and roads, built for all hauls, energy efficient, regenerative braking. Module-to-bracket technology, up to 20% higher energy density, better cycle life. Truck battery swap station, commission in less than 48 hours, require less than 100 square meters. India's first heavy-duty EV truck, Battery swap in less than 5 minutes. Unlimited range. 240 kilowatt hour CCS2 dual gun fast charging in under 60 minutes. Seamless operations, digital cockpit, connected features, ergonomically designed, comfort and convenience, zero emissions, zero noise, cleaner future, drive the change. The EV revolution begins. Green Line, decarbonizing heavy trucking.
Thank you. So, Greenline is a very young logistics company, and which is partnered with its sister company called Blue Energy Motors. So, as Sudeep was saying, innovate. So, Blue Energy Motors has been innovating heavy duty trucking. First, we started with alternate fuels called LNG, and now we are with EV. And as Tim was talking about the battery swapping technology, we have already started commissioning the battery swapping in Pune to start with, and slowly we'll take it all around the country, which would also be part of charging with solar power. And when we say green, we would be also calling it all green. So we believe that Greenline has already deployed over 600 such vehicles of LNG, and all long haul decarbonization. We believe LNG is a good cleaner fuel, and EV for all short range, 150 kilometers to 300 kilometers, moving forward by continuously adding the battery swap technology all around the highways. We believe it's a good way forward for all short haul working for decarbonizing this work. And yes, we've been able to also put up the first carbon clock and a tree saving clock, which is compared with the diesel vehicles as what emissions are being partnered, and we are also getting it audited and certified for our customers. And I've got received a very good push from every customer of ours as well as the government and support. So that's what we've been able to build.
I have one question. You have different technology which you have adopted, like LNG, EVs, etc. Is there any analysis as to what technology fits where, and what is your strategy for this? Or is it you're transforming from current IC vehicles to LNG and then to EV?
So, sir, diesel vehicle has always been there, pioneering in the country, and what we said that the need of the hour is to decarbonize the road logistics. LNG is something, as India is a vast country, north, south, east, west corridors that we have to cover. We believe it's a good alternate fuel which reduces 30 to 40% of carbon dioxide when run in comparison to a diesel vehicle. And so, with more and more pumps getting opened today in the country, the adoption of LNG vehicles has been very nicely accepted by all logistics company, viable commercially as well. So it's a good move forward. And now with EV vehicles being adopted and with battery swap, so we are killing all the subjects of range issues. We are killing all the subjects of commercial not being viable, and you know, as a way forward, by adopting this vehicle, we believe that all short haul, which is a huge movement. So today, about 4 million vehicles are running in India. That's heavy duty truck side, and 70% of the automotive pollution comes out of the heavy duty side. So we believe if this market is addressed properly, a huge pollution reduction automatically happens, and you have to make it more commercially viable as well. So the technology, the usage which we are using is commercially viable, and we invite all logistics companies, all operators to come have a view of this, learn from what we are doing, and as well adapt. So Blue Energy can also sell you vehicles and make you commercially viable, so that together we all can take the next move forward in our collaborating efforts that we can do.
It's very heartening to learn from you that you are able to use electric heavy duty vehicles successfully, because that is one area which is perceived to be very difficult to abate. So, do you target to make your fleet 100% electric anytime near future?
Absolutely. So all these battery swap stations that we are targeting to deploy, we want to charge them with renewable power. So we are talking that if we could give it to the grid and we could get it back from the grid, the renewable power, so that's offsetting it. And if the government supports, as they are supporting onto all these missions, so the grids giving us power across the highway and the grids receiving the power of solar from various places makes it net decarbonizing. And all along the way with EV vehicles, it is completely green. So the customers are supporting, the government is also very actively working on all these things and supportive in the conversation. Only thing is the finance piece. If more and more bankers, MBFCs start financing these vehicles, I suppose the adoption could also be much more easier and the penetration could be much more faster.
One more question I have. How are you leveraging telematics and other software platform to enhance the operational efficiency of your logistics?
So, sir, we use AI in a very extensive manner, just like in today's world where we see Ola, Uber, we see Swiggy, Zomato, everything on the app. We give our customers the app where all our vehicles, where they are, you can know everything on a real-time basis. Through our app, how much of trees you have saved, how much of carbon dioxide you've saved, you know that very well. Through our app, the vehicle health is completely monitored as well. The charging, the vehicle health, how much of LNG, how much of gas availability is there. Everything is well known. The driver is all 100% of our vehicles are AI enabled. So the pupils of the drivers are completely monitored. Today, you don't want any postmortems to happen from an insurance point of view, from a vehicle health point of view, from your driver health point of view. You don't want postmortems to happen. So these AI systems, they tell the driver about by looking in, if he's yawning, it will tell him that aapko neend aa rahi hai, kripya गाड़ी साइड कर ले. Or if he's looking onto his cell phone or here and there, it will tell him you are digressing and आपका ध्यान भटक रहा है, कृपया रास्ते पे ध्यान दे, in whichever linguistic language it is. So we are making the most optimum use of technology from a sustainability point of view, because the ESG compliance, whether you call it from an environment point of view where carbon dioxide and everything is safe, sustainability, your driver's health is very, very important. We've just begun the She Move drive where we are also training the women drivers and empowering them also to come in this segment, because they are the captains of this ship which are driving the future. So green married with gender diversity also is where we are working on, and we are trying to push all these guns forward in order to make a better India.
Thank you, Anand. I would now turn to the attendees for any questions from audience.
So, my name is Sharda Vishnu Bhatla. I represent Automotive Electronics magazine, which is published in Seoul, Korea. I have one very basic question, which should be common to all of you. And what is the topmost challenge that India faces when it comes to EV, the propagation of EV, the SDVs, and the entire gamut of technology that the entire world seems to be pushing for? And how safe is it for India? Because there are reports coming in that EVs, unless and until we are very careful with the technology that is applicable, say, for batteries or for the technology, the other parts of it, how safe are we, safety-wise, how are we looking at it? So that's my question to all of you. Very briefly, if you could tell us. Thank you.
Yeah, I think from consumer perspective, obviously, safety becomes a prime concern, and there are two aspects. One is thermal runaway and the series of accidents. I think you in your keynote have clearly highlighted what is the fast charging and the bad cell chemistries are giving rise to such kind of accidents, and in turn that is giving rise to the apprehensions from the customer perspective. That's the one front. So battery technology has to be really very safe in terms of energy density, power density, range anxiety, and charging time. So that's from the, and another is the availability of charging infrastructure. So that's also from the consumer or market perspective. So government is actually putting up all this. I will like to share one just a very recent success story. Our department's Autonomous Institute, based out of Bangalore, Jawaharlal Nehru Center for Advanced Scientific Research, has come out with sodium ion battery, which can fast charge in up to 8 minutes. So that's 80%. 80% charging can be done in 8 minutes. So then, and you had in my earlier question asked me about which is the shining example, how are we collaborating with industry, and we have living example here in Chennai and here with us. So Professor Jhunjhunwala is the shining example how he really created, whether he was involved in the TNET group in creating India's first research park, and there is the most advanced and successful startup, campus grown startup from IIT Madras is Ether Energy, from idea to IPO. So he has all those good examples under his belt, and which I think he'll be sharing all this. So we need to replicate those kind of. Why only India has only one or two iconic success stories? Why can't be more? So it has to really be scaled up. Numbers needs to be replicated, and new role models needs to be created.
If I can just generalize it a little bit, number one, the rate at which India's need is growing, the scalability becomes a challenge, right? But also with that, the rate of adaptability is also equally challenging. Let me just give you a small perspective into this. If an IC vehicle breaks down, I'm confident majority of the people over here can at least relay it to a technician that this went wrong. How many of us could actually tell a technician in an EV, whether it is a BMS, whether it is a controller, how do you pinpoint even the problem, even if you're a user? So that is a different challenge. Now, India being already the hub of so many problem statements, my appeal to everyone here is that instead of identifying problems and complaining about it, let us take this as a use case, make it into the hub of problem statements and translate it into success stories. So let us not take liberty in identifying problems, but also suggesting solutions and create a pool of this, because essentially India is the largest test bed of any new technology that comes into the world. You talk about geographies, you talk about ambient temperatures, you talk about the abuse cases. A vehicle designed for 4 members has to be tested by 6 of a family, right? I mean, that's how it works. So that's an opportunity in disguise. So these two, scalability and adaptability would be a challenge, at least the way we look at it. But sure, yeah.
Hello. So, just make it simple. I am one of the users, so I have to ensure everything runs safe. While all certifications, testings happen at ARAI in a very, very meticulous manner, I believe the products, the technologies which is currently being used in the country, whether it is LNG, whether it is EV, and the way forward, it's a continuous progress that the country is making. And the adaptability of that, as sooner you make it, it should be absolutely all right, is what I believe. Thank you.
Hello. Hi, this is YT from Times of India.
Is the last question.
Yeah. So I have a couple of questions actually. Hope you don't mind. First, I want to understand there is a general criticism that the Indian automotive industry is not spending enough on the R&D. They're shy when it comes to experimenting. How do you respond to that? And do you think that's changing right now, especially in the battery technologies and other things? That's one. And secondly, with the increased localization of electric vehicle manufacturing in the country, what kind of challenges we are seeing? Of course, we are seeing this critical mineral chokehold right now. But apart from that, what are the challenges that we face in terms of localizing EV manufacturing in the country? And this is my third and last question. You mentioned that the commercial vehicle EV adoption in the commercial vehicle segment is somewhat happening, right? So, what are the factors that is driving? Is it do they find it more profitable and convenient, or is it more driven from a ESG perspective. For example, companies like Flipkart and Amazon have a certain regulatory requirement to say that we are carbon neutral in some sense, right? So do you think it is commercially viable right now? Yeah, and love to hear your
Okay.
thoughts on these three. Thank
Can
you.
I take it? So, just as you are absolutely right, every corporate today is carbon conscious. They all want a reduction of carbon dioxide to be very visibly seen. They are all very, very matured industries, whether you say express cargo or whether metal mine. So everybody has the vision of reducing carbon dioxide, for which adapting this is no problem. LNG, we have already tried, we have already scaled up, and we are scaling up. And now more and more logistics companies are being invited and they are buying LNG vehicles. And the similar change is going to be in EV as well, as far as all short hauls. Uh, the only concern from a point of view is getting it financed, as it's a new product on the table. Getting it financed is not easy, as it is expensive as well in comparison to diesel. And that's one way where our company, Blue Energy Motors, with bringing this battery technology, is also working on just giving the vehicles without the battery. So the battery is a technology which would always be upgrading. Battery would also has a cycle life to it. Once the cycle of goes off, the new battery which comes in would have the new technology. So what we are trying to do, typical diesel vehicle costs around 40 to 43 lakh rupees, 55 ton, and we are trying to benchmark it with a EV vehicle and asking the logistics company that maybe at 50 lakh rupees approximately you can buy. So it's not a big change. And on the operating costs, when the battery belongs to me and with the swapping technology, I've knocked off your charging timeline. So your asset utilization also goes up. With that, it becomes viable because you can have a better operating economics supported by the corporates. When it is deployed, it would yield better results as well. So adapting it would be faster is a way that we have considered, and that's how we are also pushing as a way forward. So I think primarily I've answered those. I would request ma'am to add.
Yeah. So as you hit upon a very pertinent issue, like industry is not coming forward for their R&D, in-house R&D, because as a developing nation, we are spending close to 0.68% of GDP on R&D vis-a-vis the developed ones who are a global average is, by the way, is 1.7%. So that definitely is on that industry, all industry association. There's a SIAM, ECMA, everyone who is in the automotive sector really needs to step up and scale up their R&D efforts. And that's why ANRF came into the being to really further foster and strengthen that missing piece. Another aspect is really what are the current challenges if we really want to have localization and manufacturing of EVs. We, India, do not have any cell manufacturing facility as of now. Cells are imported, only packs are assembled here. We do not have any equipment manufacturing in the battery domain. So these are the, if we do not have, how can we really aspire to really translate India into manufacturing hub of in the entire EV ecosystem? And then comes the power electronics side. We need to really strengthen the rare earth ecosystem and also non-rare earth magnets. So and then charging always, and how do we infuse the cross-cutting technologies like AI, ML, blockchain, everything, digital twins into the and add layers to it, and how do we leverage our current penetration of internet and smartphones, and I think these are the cross-cutting work which really need to, because it's not a single problem, it's a multiple problems woven into a complex problem. But I think if we have a collective resolve for this, we can really address all these issues systematically, and therefore the whole panel which represents a cross section of the ecosystem, we really need to come on board and backed up by proactive conducive policies and investments to follow.
So maybe if I can just add one perspective to your question, right? Just summing it up really quick. There's a different angle to it. And that angle is the decision making. the driving force behind everything that you choose to do. So let me approach it from the other side as a consumer, as a buyer. If I were to extend to you a car which is, let's say, 100 rupees, made in, let's say, US, Germany, XYZ, and a car which is made in India at 150, you will see the decision making shifts in your interest to go for a one which is cheaper, even though the one on the other hand is localized. Now, with that motivation in your decision making, would the manufacturer take a decision to invest in R&D? So you have to think really in a reverse integration format also. And the same applies between the ecosystem enablers also. No matter how much we push through government, through private investors, through localization, the decision really comes on the consumer. Because the real, if I simplify it to the most basic element, the day Indian media and the users stop reporting that the prices of vegetables are being affected because of diesel and petrol costs, we have made a significant difference already. It's as simple as that. Let me call it that.
I just want to add to what ma'am and Sudeep has said. To some extent, the lack of R&D initiatives by the OEMs is being compensated by the new startups who are coming up with very innovative ideas. And for them to actually see their concept on road marketable product, I think OEM should come forward at least to support these startups to see through their innovative idea coming onto the production and on the roads. That would help both the OEMs and also the startups and the industry as a whole. You want to see anything?
No, I just read one of the, like in US, there was all electric plane ferrying 4 passengers 130 kilometers in I think 30 minutes at a $8 price. So I think that's the future we need to aspire, the future of transportation, both economical as well as sustainable.
I would like to thank all the three speakers for their excellent sharing of details in their respective areas and also very active interaction with the audience. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Sudeep, and thank you, Anand. Thank you very much.